All right, good morning. This is an evidentiary hearing pursuant to 30 V.S.A. sections 225, 108, 209, 218, and 218D in case number 25-1955, petition of Green Mountain Power Corporation for approval of its new multi-year regulation plan, and case number 26-0096. Tariff filing of Green Mountain Power Corporation for a 7.5% rate increase effective with bills rendered on or after October 1st, 2026. I'm Ed McNamara. I'm chair of the Vermont Public Utility Commission, and with me today are Commissioners Margaret Cheney and Riley Allen. Also today we have Commission staff Dan Burke, Andrew Popiti, and Jacob Davis. I'm going to start by taking appearances from the parties to the case, first from the department.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Brennan. I'm special counsel with the Vermont Department of Public Service, and I have quite a few folks with me here today. Ben Civiletti is co-counsel, and then we have Jim Porter, TJ Poore, Sean Enterline, Carol Flint, and Brittany Wilson here. And then from GDS, our retained consultants, we have Stephen Hunt, Michael Ivey, Jacob Thomas, and Cynthia Zamora.
Thank you. For Green Mountain Power.
Good morning, Jeff Hand from SRH Law here on behalf of GMP. I have with me from our office Malachi Brennan, as well as our paralegal Olivia Voth, who's listening in. From GMP, we have our witnesses here, our witnesses who are expected to speak here today, Mr. Burke, Ms. Doan, and Mr. Vingle, Mr. Castengay, Ms. Lieberman, and Mr. Iden. Also listening in is GMP's external counsel, Liz Miller.
Great, thank you. I believe that's the only parties to the case, if I'm remembering correctly. Great. All right, we're conducting this hearing using Teams platform, and we'll also be using Teams to record this. We'll ask the lawyers to keep your cameras on, and we'll ask the witnesses to keep your cameras on only during your testimony. Also, please make sure your microphone is muted unless you intend to speak. So this morning, the parties submitted a stipulated joint list of all parties' pre-file testimony and exhibits as of June 23rd, 2026. Unless there's an objection, we're going to admit that list as Exhibit Joint 1 and also admit all the pre-file testimony and exhibits listed in Exhibit Joint 1 into the record of both cases. Any objections?
No objection.
No objection. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Any other preliminary matters before we have GMP calls first witness?
Don't believe so.
Great. Mr. Hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. GMP calls Michael Burke to the stand.
Good morning, Mr. Burke.
Good morning.
I'm going to swear you in. Please raise your right hand. And do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Burke. Can you please state your name and identify yourself for the record?
I'm Michael Burke. I am Vice President of Operations for Green Mountain Power.
Great. And you've submitted pre-filed and rebuttal testimony in both the regulation plan and rate case testimony, correct?
Yes.
And I should list, there was also a piece of supplemental testimony in the reg plan proceeding as well, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections to make to that testimony?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. With the witness's testimony and exhibits already having been admitted, he is available for questioning.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Brennan, I don't believe the department had any questions. Is that correct?
No questions for Mr. Burke. Thank you.
Great. Do you know that we have a couple? Ms. Popiti?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Burke.
Good morning.
Okay. So my first question relates to managing capital expenditures, and in your testimony in the rate case, you talked about how the resilience projects will be within a separate locked resilience capital budget. And I just wanted to ask if you could explain what locked means in this context.
Thank you, Ms. Papiti. Yes, the original testimony we filed, we first had planned to do go into service after the project was in service and then performing for customers. We heard the feedback from some questions from the PUC in the workshop on why don't we put things into rate base up front and lock it going forward, along with some feedback we heard from the department. And with the information that we learned from our zero outages initiative, where we knew we could hit a certain amount and make sure we can complete that, which was the only concern we had originally with putting it in up front. So hearing the feedback, knowing what we could do, knowing the level we thought was the very at least needed in order to keep customers and crews safe, we decided to put that in. So what that means is each year, as shown in the documents, we would put in an amount, and that would be what would go into base rates versus filing it per project after the work is complete.
Okay. And are the budgets locked as proposed on a circuit by circuit basis, or is GMP's proposal just annually in total?
We would turn in the work prior to the year that we plan to do. There is always some movement and permitting and things like that that sometimes have us change our plans and go to another project. It would be within those 10 circuits that we file, but the projects could vary slightly.
Okay. But the budget total would be on a circuit basis. There would be a budget for the circuit specifically. Is that right?
When we turned it in, referencing what I just explained, depending on project base, we would turn in budgets for each of those circuits. But again, we have other projects within those circuits that if for some reason we couldn't do, we would see that other project as a valuable resilience addition as well. So if we weren't able to get permits to do projects on, say, the number 3 circuit, but we had those projects and permits to do on the number 4 circuit, we would substitute that way, but still within those 10 least reliable circuits for that year.
Okay. And what about in terms of ending up over budget? How does that fall within the plan?
The information we've learned through the Zero Outage Initiative, we really have learned exactly how much of each type of project that we can do. And just as in the Zero Outage Initiative, we feel that we will hit these numbers that we've put forward. And, you know, the plan would be not to overspend those numbers.
So there's no penalty for overspending money, those numbers that is within the plan, correct?
Correct. Our plan would be to hit the numbers that we put in there and not go over.
Okay, and then, oh, go ahead, Dan.
I just have a quick kind of corollary question to what Ms. Papiti was just asking. So if you're working within a budget, I'm just going to use round numbers and assume you have a $10 million budget for a circuit upgrade. And if you're seeing, you know, unexpected cost constraints on one component of that's risking pushing your actual cost above $10 million, can you just explain how you handle that? Would you be kind of cutting out some other components? Is there some sacrifices that you make? Or, you know, I guess my question is, do you stay faithful to that budget? Or are you more concerned about getting the upgrades in that you wanted to have to get the results that you wanted? And how do you kind of, work through that process? If that questioning makes sense to you.
Yes, it does. In fact, in my testimony, we spoke to the flexibility that the current multi-year regulation plan has in our base capital, where we are able to move dollars between years and between projects, but in the end come out at the level for the overall MYRP. And our plan would be to treat the resilience the same way. So yes, if one project was running a bit higher for whatever reason that may be, we would most likely adjust a different project in order to fit that in.
And you touched a little bit on what you've learned from the resilience projects that you've implemented so far. Can you just speak to that a little bit in terms of how costs have matched budget and what you've done to balance that out?
Absolutely. So, in the zero outages order, there was language about learning as we go, and we certainly have done that. And, some of the things we've learned is in terms of cost, our overhead three-phase, which is usually the mainline feeders, that are probably already along roads, things like that, other than a little bit of inflationary pressure that we've continued to see on materials and things like that over the last couple of years, those are coming in pretty much on par with what we expected. The single phase projects that are, some of the most important projects we do in terms of safety for the crews, they're the rural lines with extreme canopy of trees where we've had some safety issues and where customers experience the longest outages. We have seen a little bit higher cost on those for both the overhead and the underground. Again, having to do with some inflationary issues, but also the cost of tree removal on the overheads has continued to rise a bit. And then on the undergrounds, we've had some, a little bit more culvert replacement, a little more road work than we had expected, once we get out there. So those are both running a little bit higher than we expected, but in terms of the utility cost tests, they're also returning more for customers, eliminating tree trimming in the future on the undergrounds, pulling the lines out from the road to the road, from the cross country to the roadside. So even though those projects are seeing a little bit higher cost in terms of savings in the future, that they will provide us more. Another thing we learned in the process is a lot of our single phase rural lines where we aren't able to go underground. We had started running tree wire, what we call tree wire, on some of those projects. And, unfortunately, some of the outages that we've seen on the Zero Outage Initiative projects were on the tree wire. And we did learn from that. And now we've changed, for instance, from tree wire to single phase spacer. The spacer cable is the type of construction we use that has the steel cable on top that in some of our testimony, we put pictures in it, and it tends to stand up to tree contacts much, much better. So we've learned a lot during this process, and we're making changes and adjusting as we go. And on the last note, on the single phase costs being a little bit higher, we have incorporated those costs into our V.S.A as we went along. So that's accounted for. Okay.
I'm going to move into some questions about the capital documentation standards now. So Mr. Poor, in his surrebuttal, recommended that the commission clarify that resilience projects are not exempt from needing a V.S.A under the capital documentation standards. And also recommended that the draft annual resilience scoping filing to the department be moved up from May 1st to April 15th. And when I went back to look at your testimony from April, and I looked at the corresponding MYRP plan, it looked like GMP had removed the references to that document and also to the annual base rate filing report. And so I'm kind of trying to reconcile that. Is GMP proposing to not follow that process as originally proposed?
So in our initial filing, we weren't putting a base amount into the resilience platform. It was going to be an up to. When we changed to actually including it into rates every year, that's when we made that change. That being said, in terms of Mr. Poor's SIR rebuttal and the further information he would like to see, you know, at the level of resilience that we believe is needed, you know, with some conversations and clarifications on information that's not already in the project folders that we provide, we feel like what Mr. Poor has asked for is something that we could do, including the timing of turning in the projects in April versus later. So yes, I think that is something we could get to.
So are you saying that the changes that were in that version of the MYRP would not be in effect? We would see a version that would incorporate looking at the annual resilience scoping each year to agree upon the projects,
Yes, we would have a set amount, and then within that amount, we would show the V.S.A for every circuit within that, and you know, possibly more, again with some clarifications on Mr. Poor's rebuttal. But yes, we would put forward project scoping with a set amount that we've already actually listed in our filing,
right?
And go from there and take feedback, you know, well before the actual filing.
Okay, and
Andrew, do you mind if I just ask one really quick follow-up question to Mr. Burke's point there? So you mentioned doing a V.S.A by circuit. So are you envisioning a process where you'd be doing a circuit or a discrete V.S.A for each circuit, and then that V.S.A would include all the components that you plan to do for that circuit upgrade? Is that how you envision this process? I just want to make sure we understand where you're going.
Correct, which is similar to the V.S.A that Mr. Eden turned in his rebuttal testimony. Yes. And again, there's even more in Mr. Poor's documentation requests. And again, I think that's all with the level that we're proposing that we think is possibly not enough for what we're seeing. But with that level, we feel like we could work with the department to meet all the requests that they have within that documentation, along with the cost benefit analysis. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's helpful for understanding the difference between what was filed before and, you know, correlating that with what was proposed by Mr. Poor. So, okay, so in terms of the resiliency spending in total and the difference between the department's proposal and GMP's proposal, I think, you know, one of your responses from your May 27th testimony, you know, said that implementing this work at a slower pace and smaller scale risks not only imposing greater reliability burdens and storm costs on customers now, but will also lead to increased costs for customers in the future. Are those increased costs for customers in the future factored into the utility cost test, or for the benefit cost analysis, or not so much?
What I would say is yes and no. So yes, there is reduced outages absolutely factored into our cost benefit analysis. In fact, with the feedback we took all through the testimony rounds, SIR rebuttal, we continued to refine that even more, getting another company that does long-term forecasting to come in and help Mr. Eden even more to confirm what we were thinking we were going to see in future storms. And
Oh, is that the rhizome?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So not only did we had used more of a trend line, but the rhizome data, which forecasted all the way out through 2074, I believe, not only showed, wet snow continuing out through, I believe, the 2050s, 2060s. That's in the testimony. I'd have to look to get the exact date, but you can see that in Mr. Eden's testimony. But it showed a pretty drastic increase in thunderstorms. And, that is something we've always been concerned with. And, we're leading New England right now with 3 tornadoes in 1 year. We haven't seen that since the 60s. So, seeing what they put in for the uptick in thunderstorms and seeing what we've seen this week, we feel that everything we put in there is accurate, if not going to tick up more. Back to your question on is it included? There's a certain amount of storm reduction and outage cost in that Mr. Eden could probably speak to more. What I don't believe is in there is, the years in which we have, for instance, 23, I think we had $45 million in major storm cost. Fiscal year 24, we had another almost 24 million in storm cost. So, on years we have that type of cost, the savings would be even more, and that type of thing is not built into there.
So there's no built-in about estimated major storm costs?
There is storm reductions in the areas that we've done it, absolutely. But some years, just because of how extreme the weather's been, they could be even higher than I'm sure what we put in there. In terms of these lines, now, since we're talking about this, there's area just this past weekend, last Thursday, there's areas that we have pretty much completed portions of our work already in the zero outages program. I had an email last week from a supervisor in the Rutland area saying to me, look at this map. And he was pointing to the Wilmington, Brattleboro area. And even though we had outages from that storm statewide, you could see 2 big holes in the outages on the map. He was more or less pointing out that it worked, as well as hoping we do more in his area. So we know these, the underground, the spacer cable, we know this is working. And, it's just a matter of how quickly can we get it out there for the customer's resilience, the customer safety, our crew safety, all of that. And again, we worry what we proposed is not enough. And we just don't think what the department has proposed is as all encompassing as ours, where we're taking in safety, reliability, feeder backup. In this last storm, as an example, we lost a radial tap to Londonderry. Customers were out for 14 straight hours, the whole town, both circuits. And in our plan, there's actually projects in there to get feeder backup to both the Chester and Londonderry area, much like we did the Sharon Bethel area, where we've drastically reduced the outages there. We pretty much don't hear from customers in that area anymore, where before it was our worst circuit. So the levels we feel that we proposed are appropriate for what we're seeing.
Right. So in terms of the benefit cost analysis, did GMP perform the benefit cost analysis for all 40 circuits that it's proposing, or only the 10? As far as I could tell, I could only see 10. So I thought from a high level, I would ask you of this question.
Yes. So for the fiscal year 27 rate case, yes, we did do the 10 circuits that have work planned to be done in fiscal year 27, but we would do those prior to each year in succession.
But GMP is asking for approval of those amounts for the years 2, 3, and 4, but you have not yet done the cost benefit analysis for those 30 circuits that is the basis for those those amounts, those dollar amounts. Is that correct?
That is correct. We generally have the projects identified to those, but as has been seen in the filings, the circuits can move a little bit between years in terms of reliability. So to try to forecast what we'll be doing in year 4, for instance, now it is just tough based on what we're seeing. What we do know is those 40 circuits, the customers on those circuits are experiencing much less reliability, many more hours out than most of the circuits below that. So that's why, along with the, the 4.900, where we look at the 10 least reliable circuits every year, that's where that came from. But no, we haven't done those V.S.A yet, but we will as part of what we give the department in April of each year.
Okay. And then can you remind me how many circuits there are in total for that GMP has?
I think approximately 295.
Okay.
I know I said approximate and then gave a number, but sometimes we combine circuits. But there's a lot.
So when I'm thinking about, looking at the benefit cost test and thinking about, where is the breaking point? Where does a circuit not justify resilience upgrades? Do you have a sense of, is it the last 20? Is it the last 100?
I think eventually every circuit will have a resiliency job on it at some point that most likely can be done within our base capital. The reason we want to move forward with these circuits is these are the circuits where we're seeing the absolute most outages, the absolute most cost and restoration. We're seeing safety incidents on these circuits because they're incredibly heavily forested. The tree canopy is now, 70, 80-year growth versus, take a circuit in South Burlington where there's trees, but they don't have the exposure, they don't have the outages. So, after these 40 least reliable circuits, the customers aren't experiencing the amount of hours and the amount of exposure that the customers on the top 40 are. So, we'll have metrics that we're going to report every year to show exactly what people are experiencing on not only the circuits we're working on, but on other circuits. And I think that'll be a defining thing for us to decide what might be needed in the future. But we also believe, because we know many of these circuits in the top 40 are the most rural, heavily tree canopied, that, there's a good chance that we may address a lot of what's causing the cost that we're seeing and the exposure we're seeing for our crews in these areas. So once you get below 40, the customers are experiencing probably on average 15 hours a year in the 40, 50, 15. And then if you get down into the South Burlington area, it may be 3 or 4 outages a year. We don't have plans to go into those areas to do resiliency work at this point.
So you used a term within our base capital just before, and doing resilience work related to that. I mean, is there a threshold where the it just makes sense in terms of when you're doing other upgrades, or when? I'm just trying to wrap my head around thinking about that versus, asking for a separate resilience budget, especially if after the 40, you're getting to 15 hours of outages a year. So do we expect more resilience budgets after the 4-year multi-year regulation plan, or is there a threshold where it'll be absorbed in the base capital?
I think there absolutely is a threshold where it would be absorbed in base capital. And that's what I'm saying. I can't see 4 years into the future, but we do feel the customers in these 40 least reliable are experiencing the worst outcomes. We're experiencing the most cost. And, our crews have way more exposure in those areas than they do in, again, South Burlington as an example, or downtown Montpelier. And in terms of when we do resilience within the base budget, in my testimony, I spoke to how, because of the fact that sometimes we do see these storm events everywhere, whether a project is dictated by V-Trans relocating a road and we're forced to move, we're doing these projects now with the same type of standard resilience construction, because we know even in areas like South Burlington, we still will get 70-mile-an-hour winds on occasion, and we do take that opportunity to put resilience in while we're doing that. Again, there's not as much tree canopy and things like that, so we're not experiencing that up here. But whenever we have to do a project, we're looking at resilient type construction so that we're doing it while we're already there. And we do have many projects that we do in the circuits outside of the 40, just for, you know, if a line is 70 years old and isn't performing well on a good circuit, when we do that upgrade, we also do resilient type construction.
Okay. And
I'd like to jump in just on that, since we're talking about numbers and 15 being a lot fewer outages than in the 40 worst circuits. Can you just put in context, remind us, what are the number of outages ballpark per year in the 40 worst compared to those 15 and fewer?
When we started so South Burlington, I think it's an average of 3.6 hours a year. Maybe I think it's 0.9 outages, and whatever the math is to get to 3 to 6 hours, 0.9 plus. Very few, Commissioner Cheney. The worst circuits we were starting with when we started the ZOI program, and what we're still seeing in the least reliable, the East Jamaica G7 had over 100 hours a year. The top 40, anywhere from, I believe, in the 50 to 60 hours down to, 17, and an average in between of probably 27 to 30. I would have to confirm those numbers, but it's in the 4.900 report that we put out every year. But it's a drastic difference.
Thank you for that reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go ahead and jump in? I just, I'm just trying to follow the kind of conversation a little bit and trying to figure out if there is kind of a target threshold for what the system should handle in terms of resilience across, all of its circuits. I mean, you've heard the South Burlington as 0.9. Sounded like the testimony was suggesting we were north of 10 outages or events a year in the worst circuits. When are we there? When do we feel like we've kind of crossed the line where we can kind of let go of this separate track of resilience initiatives? Do you have any concept of that yet?
I mean, right now, what we look at is our service quality standards of the safety KD, and that is, I don't know exactly how that was chosen. I think it was a look at how utilities in Vermont were performing, but that is, our safety KD is 2.4 outages a year, and that lasts 2.7 hours. I'm not saying that is what should be the absolute standard for every customer. Obviously, there's averages in there, but knowing that is, in the 5 to 6 hour range versus customers seeing 10 times that, those are the areas we feel we need to concentrate on. I think if somebody was out in the 10 to 15 hours a year range, even though if you ask them, that may seem like a lot, but we're not focusing on circuits that have that few of hours out. What I would say is we hear from customers on medical devices and things like that after an hour and a half, at 2 hours at most, and they're calling worried about how they're going to get through these events. But We're not focusing on areas with outages, probably 15 hours a year or less. The focus right now is on the low end of the 40, I think is around 17 or 18 hours. And the high end, again, is over 50. That's where we're focusing on. And those are the people that have repeatedly seen these. And it's also the areas where we've spent the most dollars on restoration every year. So even though we haven't chosen absolute what the number should be, we know that people over a certain amount of hours every year that we're hearing from, those are the areas we need to go after.
Thanks. Something else you said kind of triggers a question for me, which relates to the base capital budget and kind of what looks and feels like kind of resilience investments in that base capital budget. It sounded from your comments, responses to Ms. Papiti, that when there are kind of opportunistic capital investments being made, you look towards the resilience technologies to put those in place. Is there something beyond that? Is there a more systemic commitment to resilience type investments in the base capital budget? Seems to be implied by the Iden testimony and the benefit cost analysis that there is.
So in our fiscal year 27 rate case, we actually didn't, Mr. Iden's testimony, and he could speak to that better, but in his testimony, he put in an alternative of starting with 7.5 million of resilience in the base budget. We do not have that in there. That would be an alternative that would have to be put into place. We actually reduced our resilience a bit in our fiscal year 27 rate case filing, and our base case for distribution lines is more the everyday projects that we see with a living, breathing distribution system, the road projects, the safety projects, the increasing capacity for load in an area where it's growing, occasional asset management type projects like the example I gave, where even though an overall circuit may be number 70, we may have a line that's 60 or 70 years old that's just time. We've got osmose pole inspections that have deteriorated where it's time to upgrade that line, and we use resilient methods on all of those. We pretty much stopped installing bare wire in Vermont with the tree canopy we have. So wherever we're doing a rebuild, for whatever reason it is, we're using resilience methods now. And again, a lot of these projects, we do not dictate why we're there. I think of, there's a big double change diamond going in Colchester, and we had to move all our poles like 20 feet, relocate all the undergrounds off it and everything like that. And we're not going to go through all that and put up a wire that no longer is safe for customers, crews, and less resilient.
So if I'm understanding you, it sounds like other than maybe these opportunistic events that may precipitate a capital upgrade, you don't have, for example, a commitment to spacer cables and undergrounding and line reconfiguration for resilience in the base capital budget.
There is some, but a small number. We took about, I believe, in the $5 to $7 million range, knowing we were proposing the resiliency program, and put that into the resiliency program. There is still some dollars in there, like the ones I talked about, the poor performing rural lines on the better performing circuits. We do still have some dollars in there for that. So there's not no resilience in that budget, but there's not a big programmatic amount or a programmatic amount like we're doing in the resilience program.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you said earlier that you're not sure that the amount that GMP proposed is sufficient. But then you also said that the 40, below the 40, you're looking at 15 outages a year or something. I forget the wording that you used exactly.
15
but
hours, sorry.
15 hours. So I'm trying to just wrap my head around, just building off of Commissioner Allen's question, where does it, is there a threshold, like just that threshold issue again, about, is there a point where the resilience budgets aren't needed any longer? And do we, or given your comment earlier about, you think it could be higher, I'm trying to reconcile that.
Yes, what I was speaking to is the areas where we're seeing this damage all the time, the damage is coming quicker. And what I meant was, at the very least, we should be doing what we proposed because of how much damage we're seeing in the areas. Again, if you look at our 4.900 reports, the outage reports that we turn in every year, most of these circuits are repeat offenders for years and years and years. And so those are the ones we want to go after. And the sooner we can get that work done, the sooner our crews are safer, the sooner our customers are safer. And we hope to get to them before we continue to see even more drastic changes in the climate that we've been seeing. So
Okay.
What I'm saying is we don't, if we've got all of our customers experiencing probably 20 hours or less of outages, then we've done some great work. And I don't think we're proposing resilience at the level we are right now anymore.
Okay, that's helpful.
Hmm.
And then just in terms of just a high level approach to the benefit cost analysis, in your May 27 testimony, you referenced that the total resource cost benefit cost ratio test showed 2.72 to 21.01 based on project type. And, I'm trying to wrap my head around, back to, some sort of threshold issue here. Is there a number where it no longer makes sense to do the resilience project? Like, is there a number there, or is it one, or does GMP have a sense overall high level here on how to use the benefit cost analysis test?
Yeah, what I would say is, so that the 21 is the 3-phase mainline spacer cable projects, and those have a lot of benefits on the resilience side. They not only keep the lights on for every customer fed off that line or downstream of that line, but many of those also create what we call a feeder backup tie that I had mentioned earlier, where some of these rural areas, we have what's called radial transmission, which most of our transmission is looped fed, and we can lose any one section of it. A lot of these rural areas, Londonderry and Chester substations, as an example, have a single feed to them. The Sharon substation had a single feed to it. We're building in feeder backup capabilities between those substations. So even if we lose the transmission, we can keep the customers on. We've shown how incredible that work pays off in the Sharon area. I think there's been 6 outages just in the past year. Again, this was in my testimony, that have gone from hours and hours to about 1 minute for the remote restoration healing to take place. And that's why you see the higher benefit on the 3-phase mainline feeders, because it picks up a lot more customers, a lot more commercial customers, things like that. The TRC of 2.8 and 2.72, that's mainly the single phase that I was talking about. But why those are so incredibly important is those are out where the tree canopy is the tallest. A lot of those lines are aged, cross country, hard to access. Those are a lot of the savings on the utility cost tests in terms of reducing tree trimming cost, applying those to other areas, making the crews be able to work from the road instead of out. So to me, yes, they do show a different TRC, but there's reasons to do both projects within that shouldn't be discounted.
And I mean, GMP, you were talking about it on a technology basis, but there's a circuit by circuit basis for the benefit cost analysis as well to justify doing it. So that range, I guess that's more of my question is, you know, from the circuit by circuit level, where is the point where it, you know, is there a threshold number that we should be thinking about or considering?
You know, the V.S.A is one data point in many things we look at. It's an important data point. I'm not discounting that, but the resilience and the UCT, it depends on how many customers, how many commercial customers. There's some variables in there that if the line that we're looking at is cross country, even on a mainline feeder, cross country, not roadside, bare wire with a 70-foot tree canopy all around it, even if that circuit only feeds 800 customers with not as many commercial customers, we still can't ignore that. The exposure to those 800 customers and the crews is, even though it's a reduced customer count, the exposure is the same. And so, you know, if that was all new construction that's only 20 years old and we could cut a few danger trees, then we would do that. These areas that we're doing this work, that's not the case. Okay. And I don't know if that helps. I'm trying to explain how we look at it.
Yeah. So there's really no threshold number that GMP is considering looking at on a circuit by circuit basis for the V.S.A because there's other factors that go into it and you wouldn't necessarily rely on just one threshold number, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. All the circuits were above 1, but there are other criteria in there that even a circuit that was 2 to 1, we still may have to do just because of the location of the assets, how those assets are performing, what the exposure is to our crews. You know, unlike a generation project where you're looking at, it's a new program to get powered. You know, these are lines that have already been here, serving customers that are already here that we have to continue to serve responsibly. It's not something we can just decide to let the line continue to deteriorate.
Right. And then regarding the utility cost test, you have some testimony that's, or it's just a sentence really, that you know, references the 0.35 to 0.54, which is below 1, right? So, and that you say even without resilience values for customers, operational savings from these projects will offset a significant fraction of their costs. So that significant fraction that you're referring to is 35 to 54%, right?
Correct.
Okay. And are there things that the commission should be considering when thinking about the utility cost test that are difficult to quantify, that might not show up there, that could help inform, you know, why we shouldn't be looking at 1 as the threshold?
In our first round of testimony,
Yeah, no problem. Take your time.
we didn't put safety in there. We lost a teammate.
Sorry.
Nope. In the next round of testimony, Mr. Eden did put numbers in there. Sorry, 1 moment, please.
Yes, yeah, take your time. Yeah. Little moment of silence. Yeah.
So Mr. Eden included a number for safety in the second round. That is a national number. He could speak to how he used it.
Okay. Are you okay to continue, or do you want to take a little
Yes.
break, or?
No. Actually,
Okay.
can we take
Yeah.
30 seconds?
Do you want to take a little longer? Should we take 5 minutes, Mr. Chair?
Why don't we take a 5-minute break?
Okay. Yeah, we'll come back in at 10:30.
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
All right, looks like everyone is back. Ms. Papiti? Sorry, Mr. Burke, had you finished your answer? We're happy to circle back if you prefer.
Thanks, Chair McNamara. No, I would like to continue on that answer. Obviously, safety is one. Sorry about that. The other thing that I wanted to hit that was not in there is Vermont has seen increasing brush fires the last 3 winters. Excuse me, the last 3 years, not winters. It's really spring and fall where the exposure was there. You know, we get heavy rains like we're experiencing right now. It seems up through about July 10th, and then we quickly dry up in the fall. We've seen numerous brush fires in Vermont, some having to do with our lines. The program that we put into place is almost identical or similar to some of the utilities out west that you've seen put in prior fire prevention standards. That was not the reason we did this work. We did this work for resiliency and safety, but it is an additional benefit. And because, and again, Mr. Eden can probably speak to this more, but because the national numbers for that have more to do with home losses, things like that, which we haven't experienced yet, and we're trying to do everything we can to make sure we don't. I don't believe Mr. Eden had that in there. So yes, there are other things that are not in the V.S.A. That we take very seriously, responsibility to make sure we're doing everything we can to avoid them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the V.S.A? Oh, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I had some questions. So at a high level, the cost benefit analysis we're looking at in the testimony from both the department and GMP, the total resource cost test and the utility test and cost test. And the utility cost test, my interpretation is that it is kind of enumerating the benefits that would accrue to all ratepayers, in the sense that it's reduced storm maintenance costs, reduced vegetation management. Is that correct?
Yes. Again, Mr. Eden is the subject matter expert on his, but yes, that is the utility savings that we would see. Yes.
Okay.
And the total.
Sorry, go ahead.
And the total resource cost includes the value of resiliency, which these projects are being done for. So. And
for that total resource cost test, in reviewing Mr. Iden's testimony, my understanding from the updated results is that non-residential customers make up a bit more than 96% of the proportional avoided costs. Is that something that GMP has considered?
I don't know the exact number, the percentage, but we do know as a general theme that the ICE tool and resiliency programs do have an outweighed value for commercial customers. That is something that we know exists. It's something that we actually have talked about within the resilience docket here in Vermont. And, you know, we feel that the residential homes need to have resilience just as much as the commercial. But yes, the tool does have a tendency to outweigh things on the commercial side versus the residential.
So on that topic, something that I was curious about was if the vast majority of avoided costs and therefore the benefits that are being considered in the total resource cost test are accrued to non-residential customers, is it appropriate, or do you have a viewpoint on the rate increase resulting from the resiliency spending being spread equally across all classes of ratepayers?
You know, what I would say to that, even though the ICE tool does give more value to the commercial customers, the customers that live in these areas are actually all counting on many of those commercial customers for their well-being and safety during these events. You think of stores, emergency operation centers. So to me, I don't feel like any one customer should pay for this, because even though the ICE tool does give more value to the commercial customers, all of the customers are benefiting in one way or another, whether they're going to these commercial businesses in their area or definitely in cost. The cost of storms, just like the cost of construction, are borne by every single customer in the company. So whether you're doing a project in South Burlington to replace an older line, or a resilience project in Townsend, all customers pay for that, and all customers pay for storm response as well, not just the customers that are working, you know, that happen to live on that individual line.
Okay, and my last question on this is has GMP modeled the rate impacts going into the future because of the resilience spending? Because of course, the spending, it's items that will last for decades.
Mr. Bingle can speak more to that, but what I would say is we know that the resilience spending that we are proposing in this multi-year rate plan is about a 1% rate effect each year during the plan. And, you know, we've seen major storm costs of over 5% in 1 year before. So we do feel like we're looking at all aspects of this, the cost to customers of the projects, but we're also looking at overall costs in response. And we feel like this is a good level that can get customers more resilient, safer in their homes, as well as reduced cost on the storm side. So we have looked at that in each year of the multi-year regulation plan, and Mr. Bingle could probably speak at more depth to that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I have a general question, Mr. Burke. In your May testimony, you mentioned that the updated V.S.A shows a net positive from the resilience spending, and that delaying or shrinking that spending would lead to higher costs for customers when the necessary work will be completed later. Were you, does that relate to the factoring of higher and continued storm costs, or is it also the inflationary pressure on materials and construction costs that as they rise during those years?
Both. We do know that even just the inflationary costs we've seen in the past year on some of the construction, we know going out further that will continue to increase.
Yeah, if I could just add a couple questions here. You now have kind of the experience of a couple years of investment with these technologies in a couple circuits, and I'm interested. I know that the storage proposal sort of dropped off here, but it affects the Zone 4 customers. But as I think about it, the technologies that you are deploying are kind of upstream of the Zone 4, and at least in my mind, there should be, beneficial consequences of these investments to the Zone 4 customers. And I'm just asking the question of whether that's your experience or not, given where we are today.
Yeah, we did withdraw the storage proposal. We still believe it's an incredibly important portion of what we do. The benefits that we see on the power supply side that Mr. Castonguay could speak of later are still there, and certainly the resilience side. We now track batteries and how they're doing during outages, and it's pretty impressive to see. In terms of how the downstream infrastructure projects are performing and how that's affecting the Zone 4 customers, it is reducing the amount of outages and outage hours that they're seeing. Absolutely. It's moving the circuits down the rung of where they were before that work. So absolutely. What we aren't doing is we aren't doing projects on those Zone 4 type lines. So they do still have exposure both to outages and safety and things like that, which was the point of that proposal in the first place. So yes, their experience has improved, but there still is some exposure to those customers.
Thank you. Another concern that has been kind of in the back of my mind is the concept of kind of focusing on a certain vintage of advanced technologies. And what we're doing in essence is accelerating kind of the current application of what we recognize as, I guess, cutting edge technologies today. But downstream, presumably, there'll be a continued evolution in improvements in the technologies. Is there kind of a risk or kind of a tempering consideration that we should have in our minds as we kind of accelerate this commitment to the current vintage of advanced technologies targeting resilience?
Commissioner Allen, are you speaking to the infrastructure type or the storage?
Yeah.
Type?
No, I'm speaking to the infrastructure. So the undergrounding, the spacer cable technologies, the specific technologies that, at least a decade ago, I don't remember kind of coming up in any conversations, and I don't recall it being relevant, but suddenly it has come on in force.
I think so. Spacer cable actually has been around for quite some time. I think what has dictated the expansion of not only GMP, but many utilities across the Northeast and across the United States using it more is the frequency of severe weather. So, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I don't even remember a wet snowstorm. It was all light and fluffy. Vermont's tree canopy, the Northeast tree canopy wasn't what it is now. So these technologies have actually been around for quite a while. They just weren't used in the manner they're being used now. The cable and conduit, that is definitely something we hadn't used before, going back, I think, pre-2017. And really what that was also available pre-2017. But what we finally realized is where some looked at that technology as being harder to work with, we actually looked at it as a way to reduce the cost of putting underground in the ground. So I don't believe any of those types of technologies are going to be obsolete. They've been around for a long time, and we haven't seen anything that has bettered those types of things in terms of preventing outages and keeping the lights on. So I don't believe there is any known technologies that will, make any of these investments not worthwhile. Right now, they're the absolute best we have, and we know they work.
Thank you. It's been a fair amount of testimony from all sides on kind of rate increases and the implications of these resilience investments. It sounds like you're, comfortable with, an expected rate increase of 1% per year. And I guess that's kind of the tempering influence on our drive. Are there other tempering kind of influences on the pace issue of how fast we go? I mean, the utility cost test is being advanced by the department. I think of it as a tempering influence on the very high benefit cost ratios you're getting out of the total resource cost test.
You know, like I said before, we took into consideration all the feedback we've gotten, both from the commission and from the DPS. And we initially proposed in our IRP an even faster pace. We took the feedback, we looked at the performance of what we have been able to do in the past year and a half, almost 2 years now, within the zero outages program. And we've seen the benefit in the areas that we're doing this, which, remember, the areas in the Zero Outage Initiative, not only were they the least reliable places, but they were the most costly as well. And, you know, those crews in those areas now are being deployed to other districts. That's how well this is working. And we have, seeing what we're seeing in storm costs, seeing what we're seeing in all other cost pressures outside of even electric, we feel like this is actually our best way to help control costs in the future. Storm costs, reduced tree trimming, because we don't have to trim there anymore with the underground. And, you know, we feel that that 1% is a number that, when I've talked to customers about it, and they still are calling us all the time, asking us why we aren't undergrounding more. When we lost the Londonderry radial feed tap, I had an email almost immediately, why aren't we burying these lines? And of course, we understand we can't bury them all, and we explain that to customers. But in the areas we know that are repeated outage drivers, cost drivers, we feel like the plan that we have, even though we'd like to do more quickly, we feel like the 1% and the work that we know we can get done is providing benefits enough where that is well worth it for customers to have that work done for them.
And one last question from me. You talked about essentially the approximately 1% increase in rates that's associated with the $241 million investment over the 4 years of the plan. And I assume that that's kind of built up from, you know, a long live depreciation of assets, and the cost of capital that's associated with that, and then the taxes that are paid on income that's related to capital. But there are also, you know, you've also pointed out, you know, the utility system benefits that are associated with that. And my question is, whether they, you know, they are flowing through in your estimation of impacts. That is, does the plan itself kind of incorporate and allow those benefit streams to kind of flow through in the mechanics of the plan, to your knowledge? Or is that a better question for Mr. Bingle?
I think it probably is. I was afraid you're going to ask me about taxes and depreciation. That is probably a better question for Mr. Bingle. What I do know and can speak to is, you know, the bill effect is any reduced major storm cost is a direct benefit to the customer in terms of their bill. That would flow immediately. And there also is some, obviously the averages on the minor storms would continue to go down, and that would be factored into rates. So on a high level, yes, there is mechanisms that I believe are there, but Mr. Bingle could certainly speak more detail to that.
But your 1% estimate did not expressly kind of incorporate those into that assessment, to your knowledge.
The 1% is, it does take in, it's more or less if we don't have other savings coming into it. So yes, those are not necessarily incorporated in that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have.
I'd like to, Mr. Burke, I'd like to just follow up a little bit. This is somewhat of a high level question. Just listening to your comments, I'm trying to understand, or your testimony, I'm trying to understand a little bit of GMP's overall philosophy on appropriate level of resilience, and I might have misheard, but I thought I heard two somewhat contradictory things, and I'm hoping you can help me out. During a discussion, I believe it was with Commissioner Allen about safety and SAIDI standards. I wrote down, you're not saying that all customers should have the same level of reliability. You recognize that those are averages. But just about 5-10 minutes ago, I thought I heard you also say residential customers should have the same level of resilience as commercial customers. And at least in my mind, those seem a little bit contradictory. So I'm curious as to what is GMP think of as an end goal for resilience? It's a very open-ended question. I hope you can help me out because I'm having trouble understanding. Like I go through the testimony and I'm not getting an overarching feel for what GMP's end goal is 10 years from now, for example.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I was trying to explain, it might be better to talk about customer hours out. And if you look at our system average, the customer hours out is the 2.4 times 2.7. Whereas the customers in the 40 least reliable are anywhere from 17 or 18, 3 to 4 times higher than that, all the way up into the 50s and last year into the hundreds. So, 5 to 10 to 15 times higher than that. So what I meant by 15 hours or less, we're not going after those areas with resilience. So even though we haven't picked an absolute number, and again, the reason I say, I talk to customers every single storm, including this last event, and they're struggling with a 2 to 3 hour outage. I understand that happens. So what I was going to say is I wouldn't want to tell a customer they're going to be out for 15 hours, but if it's a circuit that's experiencing on average 15 hours a year, we're not going after that. Like we do feel addressing these circuits, these 40 circuits in the next 4 years, we may be at a point where we're back to just, more of a smaller resilience bucket within our base capital. We're really hopeful that's where we get because of the fact that these circuits are such outliers to the rest of the circuits, the other 260 circuits on our system. What I meant about the commercial versus residential, the residential customers struggle as much, if maybe not. Obviously a commercial customer wants to sell goods and things like that. But in terms of safety and working through storms, we're usually not hearing from commercial customers anywhere near as much as we're hearing from customers in their home, especially a lot of the elderly people that don't have family around anymore. So I really meant, most of our time is spent addressing the residential customers more than it is the commercial customers.
Thank you. I want to follow up with something that you just stated. And you're using words like you hope that after the 40 circuits are completed, you can essentially get back to baseline. And that seems aspirational. It sounds like you've done a fair amount of study. I'm curious why there isn't more certainty. And I'm flagging that because if there is the 1% per year for the next 4 years to address the 40, it's seeming to me that GMP is not saying, but don't worry about it. It's only those 1% per year for 4 years and then it'll level off. I'm not hearing a lot of certainty. And I'm curious as to, is there expectations that you have that once the 40 is complete that you could do that? Hope is a very nebulous word, and I'm wondering if you can give a little bit more certainty associated with this.
Yes, the only reason I said hope is I cannot predict the climate from the forecast that we've seen in the areas that we've seen. We feel like these 40 circuits are where our dollars, our risk, our customers are being exposed the most. So that is where the word hope came from, is climate has done some things that have surprised us. From what we've seen, we don't believe that's going to be the case. The hope was just, I can't guarantee today that we're not going to start getting 3-inch ice storms every day in South Burlington. That's not the forecast, but that's where the word hope came from.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. That's great. All right, that's all I had for the moment.
I just had a follow-up question, if I could. The conversation with Chair McNamara triggered a thought about the ICE calculations. I know, Mr. Burke, that you've been kind of an ICE skeptic, if you will, at least as it relates to the quantification of value for customers. And I'm trying to figure out where you are and where you think we should be, and our confidence in relation to these customer outage valuations that are ultimately kind of developed through LB&L. And my understanding is they're developed, at least at the residential level, based upon survey calculations of customer assessments of value.
Yes. Some of my skepticism was based on just the value to the commercial customer versus the residential customer. And I presented a couple different examples of that in the resiliency docket, where, a line that had experienced multiple outages, but it happened to only feed, I think, 21 customers, showed a really low value, even though the line was, I think, approximately 60 years old. To be blunt, we had a couple brush fires on it. It was off-road, and it didn't give any value to doing that, and we knew we needed to do that. Whereas, again, it does give higher value to commercial customers. What I have, as I've studied more and more and looked into this more and more, and again, Mr. Eden, I think, can speak more as an expert to the overall thoughts on that. But both LB&L, who I've worked quite a bit with now in a couple different occasions, and the DOE created this tool specifically to value projects like that. And that's what these projects are, is they're resilience projects. So we have come around to using the tools that have actually been made available out there for these projects. So my skepticism came from, it didn't value a project that we knew we needed to do. But these are resilience projects, and that's what those tools were made for.
So I'm interpreting that as you've come around to the view that these are a valuable contribution to the assessment of benefits and costs of these projects.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else on that topic, or I wanted to move on. Oh, Dan.
I just have one quick question. This actually is possibly more appropriate for Mr. Brennan and Mr. Hand to address in briefing. And it's a question that I intend to ask TJ Poor later this afternoon, but I would like to hear your perspective, if you have one, Mr. Burke, which is that the Commission's currently in a separate proceeding addressing issues related to resilience generally. And I know we've had a lot of testimony in this case from both sides about the components of the V.S.A. and what should or potentially should not be included. And to the extent the parties are looking for explicit guidance from the commissioners on what should be in these resilience BCAs, is it preferable to have that guidance come from this case, with the GMP case, or would it be preferable to have that come through a sort of broader proceeding involving the other distribution utilities? I guess that's a way of saying, is GMP unique enough to have sort of a different approach, or would you rather see more of a record developed with the other utilities participating? And so if you have thoughts on that, I welcome them, but that is also somewhat of a legal question as well for Mr. Hand.
I guess I would start with all customers in Vermont, regardless of who they have for utility, are probably on the same level of needing resilience. And after that, I think I might defer to Mr. Hand on his thoughts.
Thanks. I just wanted to give you a chance, and I'm going to ask Mr. Poor about that later today, because the department's, pushing the ship a little bit on the resilience proceeding as well.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the performance metrics that GMP proposed in response to the department's testimony. So this was in your April testimony. And so GMP is proposing that performance standard for the resilience projects be set initially at an average of 1.5 outages per resilience project per year. When you say resilience project, is that like the circuit? We'd be looking at the circuit and 1.5 outages?
No, in our plan, we created zones within the circuits, and we're doing projects within those zones. And so if you had a zone 1, 2, 3 that were all completed, you would have 3 separate zones that you would report out on that all have to meet that criteria. And so, no, it's not whole circuits. It's literally anything that we've completed and goes into service and is serving customers. We would start to be reporting on that, whether, they're usually probably 2 or 3 miles long each. And each one we put in, we would report on their performance.
Okay. And, why is 1.5 the right number? Should it be closer to 0? Should it be below 1? I'm just trying to, obviously, should it is kind of a loaded question there, but did you consider, and why not? Why not make it closer to 0?
So in our zero outage testimony, the 0 came from the storage. We always knew that the grid was still going to go down. We had things like car pole accidents, major storms. The reason I mention those is we're not in our regular SQURP reliability, safety CATIE, those, car pole accidents don't, but the major storms, those all come out of those stats. What we're saying for this, if we keep the lights on, the customers are on, they're safe in their home, our crews are still home, they're not having to respond, they're safe. We don't have to worry about how long it takes to get the customers back on. So keeping them on in the first place and not having a call is the ultimate goal that really dictates everything for the customers. In terms of the 1.5, we looked at some of the circuits when we started this that had a SAFE of almost 11, and a 1.5 is a pretty drastic reduction from that. What I would say, as we learn more and get more done, this is somewhat of an interim number, and we are happy to discuss what ultimately that number should be as we learn more and more about this. But again, I remind that there's no exemptions for this standard. Whether it's a car pole accident, major storm, we've had towns, even though we put big markers, we've had towns plow 2 pad mounts off. All of those count. So we're starting at 1.5 just based on some things we've seen. And as we get further out in the data, if that number needs to be changed, we are absolutely open to discussing that.
So it helps to understand that it includes any sort of outage there. Yeah. And then is there a time frame that would make sense to revisit it? Is it 1 year or 2 years, or do you have a recommendation on that?
I think 1 year would probably be pretty short, just because we don't it'll take time to get more and more zones and sections of the line into service. But, the metrics, we have a pretty robust set of set of metrics that we'll be reporting on every year. And I think all of those metrics can really help us tell when and how to change those numbers if appropriate.
And is the outages a duration? Is there a duration associated with that or no?
No, that's why I was trying to, I apologize that I didn't explain that correctly, but our goal is to stop the crews from going out, stop the outages, not even have anybody respond. That's how we get our savings. That's how the customers stay safe in their homes. That's how our crews stay safe. So no, the goal is to literally avoid the outage, period. And if we do that, all of the other things fall into place.
Okay. And then moving on to the penalty associated with not meeting that, your testimony says that if the average outages were 2 per year, this would result in a $50,000 penalty under the SQURP. And that's in total, $50,000 in total. There's no, that's not per anything. It's in total, correct?
Correct. And, certainly that goes up commensurate with how much you miss it. And the total dollars at risk here is about $900,000. Mr. Cassingay can speak a little bit deeper onto the metrics and the funds and how that all works. But there is, I think, approximately $900,000 that would be at risk with this SQURP.
Do you mean with the SQURP in total? Or not just with this?
Just the reliability piece for the 1.5.
Okay, so where does the 900,000 threshold happen?
I might have to defer to
Okay.
Mr. Castagne on that.
Okay, let me just make a note to. Go back to that with Mr. Castengay. Yeah, because I noticed in your testimony you have a $2 million number, so I'm trying to reconcile the 900,000 and the 2 million.
That includes the storage as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so and we'll talk to Mr. Castengay about that a little bit more
Yes.
too. Okay,
Yep.
great. Did GMP consider any other ways of approaching performance metrics, like more of an incentive approach as opposed to a penalty approach?
Certainly we've heard that and questions on that. We just want to do the right thing, keep the lights on, and we don't need an incentive to do that. So that's why we haven't really discussed that in any length. So no, it's been brought up, but no, we haven't talked about how to do that.
Okay. And then in terms of wrapping it up into the SQURP, it meaning the resiliency metrics, did GMP consider having a separate approach outside of the SQURP, or yeah, that's my question.
The SQURP is actually a known quantity. It's already got metrics, it's already got penalties and the ways those are laid out. So adding it into the existing system that's already there, we thought was the best place versus trying to create something new and starting from scratch. So no, we thought that adding it into the existing SQURP was the place it should go.
Okay, and I know that there is some tracking associated with managing capital spending versus budget that will show up, but there's no penalty associated with that, correct?
Could you ask your question again? I'm not sure.
So I know that GMP will be reporting on capital spending versus budget, but there's no penalty associated with overrunning specific budgets, correct?
No, we track spending and closings to plant separately, and I am not aware of any penalty there. I'd say we work hard to make sure that we close to plant the number that we put in there.
Okay. And then Ms. Flint in her surrebuttal testimony proposed that the SQUIRT be revised so that their calculations were reported annually. I just wanted to get a response from GMP in that. Is that more suited to Mr. Castonguay or, yeah?
Yes, I believe we have had meetings with the department on a lot of these, and if I'm trying to remember the reference, if that reference was fiscal year versus calendar year, we did have those conversations.
Okay.
And yes, that is something we can do. If that's not the exact reference, Mr. Castonguay has actually been having meetings with them separately, and he may have more information on that.
Okay, and yeah, we'll talk with him about that. And those are the topic areas that I had for questions. I don't know if anyone else has anything from our end to cover. Dan?
I just have one quick question. Well, I hope it's a quick question. It kind of goes back to sort of the beginning of your testimony and talking about the costs of the resiliency projects done to date. And you talked about inflationary pressures on materials, but I'm wondering, how have labor costs come in compared to projections? Have you seen more or fewer labor hours?
Some of the higher cost I mentioned on the underground is a little bit of inflationary on the labor, but some of it is just hours from, having to replace more culverts than we thought we were going to because we were cutting through them, things like that. Certainly we've seen some inflationary pressures overall over the last 2 or 3 years, going all the way back to what came out of the pandemic. But I think it's more a little bit of inflationary on the labor and materials, and also just some on the underground, some road work that was a little more, in order for us to bring it back the way we left it, a little bit more road work. And then on the overhead single phase, just the tree removal continues to see some pressures there on the labor costs.
And especially with tree removal, are you seeing that you're more reliant on outside labor as opposed to internal GMP labor than you initially projected for these projects, or is it sort of consistent with how you estimated that breakdown?
It's consistent. In the zero outage program, we didn't have internal labor other than the people that have to do the switching and tagging on these projects. In the future, we will blend in into the new resilience. Our plan is to blend in our crews, but the projects in the zero outage initiative were the vast majority were done with external crews. And GMP does not have internal tree crews either. Those are all external based.
All right, that was it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Burke? Not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair, sorry.
Close enough. Mr. Hand.
Thank you. Just some limited questions for you, Mr. Burke. I know you've been on the stand for a while. Thank you for your testimony.
My apologies. My apologies, Mr. Hand. I've forgotten an old practice that we used to have. The department would typically be given the opportunity to ask any follow-up as a result of questions that we had that raised new information. I think that's actually would be more appropriate to give the department that opportunity before moving to GMP. So my apologies, Ms. Brennan.
Understood. I appreciate it. The department does not have any follow-up, but we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Hand.
Great, thank you. All right, Mr. Burke, I have just a few categories of questions. First, I'd like to take you back to sort of the beginning of the questions you received. You were talking about the lessons you've learned from, or you were asked about the lessons you've learned as a result of your ZOE work. Do you recall those questions?
I do, yes.
And I think you mentioned some of the learnings on constructability, et cetera, but have you learned any lessons with respect to how this work is actually performing for customers?
Yes. As I said before, it's actually performing exactly as we assumed and had experienced that it would. You know, when we were going to get new permits to do more work in areas, we're actually having customers showing up and saying what an amazing difference it is. In terms of the predicted 90% on the overhead and 98% on the underground, we feel like we're hitting that. We have seen some outages there, but literally, like I spoke of before, the crews that we used to have in these areas for days on end in storms, we're sending out to other districts now. So yes, it's performing as we expected it. The customers have expressed in thanks, actually, and it's doing everything we thought it would.
Great. Have you prepared any graphical exhibits that would give the commission some sense, for example, on a circuit basis, of how this work is impacting outages?
Yes, I believe in my first round of testimony, I apologize, there's been quite a few different rounds. We did do a year-by-year outage example starting in 2024 through, I believe, 2020 through the end of 2024. And we showed the projects that were completed in each year, along with the corresponding outage reduction in each year. And now that you're bringing it up, yes, it is a pretty dramatic improvement in the areas, even as we were seeing higher wind speeds in some of the events we had in those later years. So yes, I would have to look it up to get the exact number.
I thought I might just put it on the screen so the commission has in mind what you're talking about.
I'm actually going to object to this. This graphical exhibit wasn't shown in any of the commission or commission staff questions.
I think it does go directly to some questions that were asked by staff and the commission, including what is being seen on some of the extremities of these circuits. And I think it would be helpful for the commission to see that format in relationship to those questions.
Right. I believe I'm sure the commission has seen them, and this wasn't. I believe Mr. Burke answered the questions of the commission, and this is just not something that was of conversation, this specific graphic, before this moment.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Burke, you were asked some questions about the nature of the work you're implementing, and I think you responded by talking about the holistic nature of the planning that you've been doing for resilience work. Do you recall those questions?
I do.
And you spoke, for example, about the benefits of things like feeder backup. Do you recall those questions?
I do.
Do you have any concerns with respect to the department's proposal vis-a-vis that holistic planning that you've done?
I'm also going to object to this one. I don't recall this being discussed by commission or commission staff.
I believe there were questions about the nature of the planning and questions about the impact of GMP's proposal versus the department's proposal.
My understanding was they were more limited than what you are discussing, what you're bringing up. It also sounds more like a question for the department. I just think that the scope is too broad of the question that you're asking for what the commission and commission staff asked.
Mr. Hand, can you try a more targeted question?
Yes. Mr. Burke, you were asked about the benefits of the proposal you've presented and its relationship to what the department has proposed. Ms. Papiti asked you a question on that. Do you have any concerns related to some of the benefits you've talked about vis-a-vis the department's proposal?
As I spoke of before, the plan that we put together encompasses many aspects of the resiliency program and the planning, and it addressed Zone 1 projects in many areas that also created feeder backup benefits to other circuits in the area, along with addressed both Zone 2s and Zone 3s that are where we spend our most dollars and where we see the biggest safety exposures. So the plan that we put forward is encompassing of all that for many of the 40 least reliable circuits, and reducing that would reduce all of those different benefit streams that we have in our plan.
Okay, thank you. You were asked a question by Ms. Papiti about the overall capital amount GMP is proposing for resilience spending in this case. Do you recall those questions?
I do.
I believe you cover this in your written testimony, but it's accurate that GMP is proposing a capped amount of capital to be treated consistent with the way its base rate capital is also treated, correct?
That's correct.
So when Ms. Papiti was asking you about whether there's a penalty, is it your understanding there's a penalty, or just that GMP can't spend more than that amount on resilience over the term of the plan?
It's my understanding that we can't spend more than that over the life of the plan.
Okay. And that's with respect to close to plant amounts during the plan period.
That's correct.
Thank you. You were asked a series of questions by staff and the commission about what you felt the appropriate standard might be for resilience going forward. Is it your understanding that there are other proceedings ongoing which could help address that from a statewide perspective?
I have certainly been taking part in the department's requested resiliency docket. I've been a contributing member of that docket, and yes, that is one of the things that's been mentioned within that docket on whether something could be landed on what that number might be. Yes.
Great. And I believe there were some questions about sort of your view on the certainty of the work delivering the estimated savings you're expecting. Can you speak to how the performance guarantee relates to that, to GMP's confidence on the results of this work?
Can you ask that question again, Mr. Hand?
I'm just wondering if you have any other perspective on why GMP proposed that performance guarantee.
Yes. The reason GMP proposed that guarantee is everything that we're doing comes down to reducing the amount of outages in response that we have. The penalty that we're proposing has to do with if and when any of these line goes out. And if they do go out a certain number of times, GMP would face a penalty within the SQUIRP. we're confident in the work we're doing, and we don't believe that's going to happen. And these are going to perform as we've said they would in the plan, and the customers will have the experience that we're striving for. So we feel like having it based on if it goes out or not is where it should be focused on. And that's why we put that specific penalty and performance criteria forward.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hand. And thank you, Mr. Burke. Thanks for your testimony today.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Hand, next witness.
Yes, GMP would call Ms. Doan and Mr. Bingle to the stand.
I think I see you both. Good, still, it's good morning, Ms. Doan and Mr. Bingle. I will swear you in as a panel if that's okay. And so if you would both raise your right hand and swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Doan and Mr. Bingle. Can you both identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure, I'm Laura Down from Green Mountain Power, and I'm the manager of operational accounting here.
And I'm Rob Bingle, and I'm a manager of financial planning and analysis at GMP.
Great. You've both offered pre-filed supplemental and rebuttal testimony in these proceedings. Do you have any corrections to make to any of that testimony?
We do. We actually have two corrections. The first one starts at the bottom of page 13 of our MYRP rebuttal testimony on April 15th. So again, it was starting at the bottom of page 13 of our rebuttal testimony for the MYRP, and it was filed on April 15th. And should I proceed, Mr. Hand?
Yes, go ahead. I'm going to try to pull up your testimony while you're speaking, so it's just on screen.
The last sentence should read, and it spills over into page 14. Had the year featured results exceeding expectations, there we go, GMP's alternative would be somewhat more favorable to customers than the current plan.
So you're striking then the department's proposal, and that instead should say then the current plan.
Correct.
Okay. And the other correction you have to make?
So that is on Exhibit GMP LD RB1 Revision 2. So our multi-year rate plan, filed on April 15th on page 9. So Exhibit GMP LD RB1 Revision 2, April 15th, page 9, please. Okay, so that $141 million, that should be now 133, and that reflects our changes that we made as part of our fiscal year 2027 rebuttal in May. So that number should be 133.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other changes to make?
No, those are the changes.
Okay, the witnesses are available for questions.
So I just want to remind Mr. Hand, if you can file revised versions of the testimony and the exhibit into EPUC, so we can have that complete. Thank you. All right, Ms. Brennan, I don't believe that the department had any questions. Is that correct?
No questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Turn to Ms. Papidi.
So we had staff issued some questions that I believe Mr. Dunham, sorry, Ms. Doan and Mr. Bingle were responsible for answering, and so I don't know if it would be helpful for me to read the question out loud. Would that be helpful, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to, we
sure.
did, I'm sorry to interrupt. We did, Ms. Doan and I were going to answer questions 3 and 4.
Excellent. Okay. So question 3, I'll just read so that we have it for folks, is in response to the department's recommendation that GMP adjust its proposed MYRP, quote, to make fewer rate filings and adjust rates no more than twice a year, end quote. And that's in reference to page 16 of Mr. Hunt's testimony in the MYRP case. GMP witnesses testify that the department's proposal, quote, would require substantially reworking the operation of the current adjusters and mechanisms and would by necessity result in fewer but larger rate changes. And then there's a reference to Ms. Doan and Mr. Bingle's pre-filed rebuttal testimony at page 25. And we ask, please be prepared to discuss the changes necessary to rework the current adjusters should the commission adopt the department's proposal. So we'd like to hear from you on that.
Okay, so thank you. We actually have considered the DPS's recommendations, and also in answer to this question, we have prepared an exhibit which is a proposal of how we could file twice a year on these adjusters. And Mr. Hand, do you have that exhibit?
Is this something that was filed in EPUC already, or is it brand new?
It has not been filed yet. Obviously,
Okay.
that request came in at the very end of the week, and we're happy to walk through what it looks like in response to the commission's question on how you would do this.
Ms. Brennan?
Mr. Hand, did you previously share this with the department?
We have not shared it with the department yet, no.
Be happy to say what it contains, or at least in terms of what the possible proposal would be.
Or it gets.
The department would like the opportunity to see this before we go ahead and put it on the screen.
Yeah, we're happy to email it over to you, and Mr. Bingle can maybe give a response to the commission's question in the meantime.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So one of the challenges we've had, with our adjusters is that by our being able to adjust them on a quarterly basis, we do get to, in a timely manner, discuss it with the DPS, and then also address it via our bills. And we do on a quarterly basis, so the adjustments are smaller. The fewer chances we have for these adjusters to be on our bills, the greater the chance that the adjusters grow in size. We also have today, in an effort to lower that impact, we have the smoother, which is essentially that the quarterly adjustments have to go in the same direction twice before we change customers' bills, because we are aware of customers being sensitive to the number of bill adjustments. So that's why we have the smoother. If we went to a semi-annual basis, we would eliminate that, and we would just file twice a year. And we would file essentially a base rate filing with 2 of the adjusters. And then at the 6 months later or so, approximately, we would file the ESAM, non-major storm exogenous, and the other 2 adjusters. So that would essentially meet the DPS's recommendation. Timing, we still prefer our original quarterly filings, just because when you look at the timing of them, it can be approximately 9 months to a year between the time where a period for power supply costs and revenues have passed and when we either return the money to customers or collect from them. So that's our biggest concern.
So just to clarify, if you could state again, so the ESAM adjustment would occur as part of the 6-month filing after the base rate filing, is that correct?
Yeah, just to be crisper on some of the numbers, so I kind of gave an overview, but it would be, we'd have a June 1st filing.
Okay.
Well, actually, just to start the fiscal year. So January 30th, 2027, we'd have an informational power supply revenue adjuster, storm adjuster, where it would reflect Q1's results, but it would not affect the bills and would require no PUC or DPS action. The second, so it'd be just informational. The second item would be on June 1st, when we would file for a base rate filing, and we would also have the Q1 and Q2 power supply revenue and storm adjusters. So that'd be filing number 1. Then on July 30th or 31st, we would file an informational report on how Q3 turned out for the power supply adjuster, revenue adjuster, and storm. Again, there would be no actions required. And then, let me just skip back to the June 1st filing. Pending PUC, DPS review, those impacts would occur starting October 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Then we would, the next one after the July 30th informational filing would actually be December 1st. And that would be the ESAM, which ties into the end of our fiscal year. And so that's roughly the same timing as what we have right now. The non-major storm exogenous, which would be same part of the filing schedule it currently is. But then we'd also have the Q3 and Q4 power supply adjusters. That also would have a few months of review. And so that would then, pending that review, would go into rates, or excuse me, not rates, onto customers' bills April 1st, either a return or a recovery.
And when you came up with this proposal, did you analyze, looking backwards, historical rate impacts of looking at the quarterly adjustments and whether or not this would potentially have any sort of rate shock issues, or just based on historical numbers? I'm just trying to get a sense of if there's any concerns.
There is
remaining.
possible. There is some possible fluctuations. So, for example, it all depends on the timing, though, frankly, and what we've been seeing in terms of consistency and the way the adjusters are going. So, for example, the challenge we had this current plan is that we hit inflationary period as soon as we filed. We filed at possibly one of the worst possible times, because as soon as we filed in January 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and there was a lot of inflation that took place right after that. So we've had quarters of recoveries, but what your question's asking is, will you see possible shocks? And the answer is it depends, because say, for example, we have a recovery of $5 million in one quarter, $5 million in the second quarter, and that all depends on when we're starting on with the customer's bills. That would be $10 million. Suddenly that would be on customers' bills. Whereas with our quarterly process, it would be $5 million first, and then it would be another $5 million that would be covered over terms of the MYRP, or 12 months, whatever is longer.
Would it be helpful to have some sort of flexibility built in if it were over a certain threshold, that GMP could propose an alternative way of rolling out the change?
Well, we would still keep the below $1 million threshold in terms of that affecting customers' bills, just because that's not a large amount either direction. But there's always a possibility, because we are always trying to reduce the impact on customers' bills.
I guess my question is, should there be something, if we went with this proposal, should there be something built into the plan that would allow GMP to propose an alternative if the increase was above a certain threshold, as opposed to rolling it out all at once.
Currently, though, we do have it spread over the life of the MYRP.
Right.
So a lot of it depends on timing, though, frankly, on that, right? So as it gets later into the plan, that kind of goes away. It becomes the next 12 months. It would
But
be
as of
nice
now,
if, oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say with the plan as it is right now, the last adjuster goes beyond the term of the current plan, correct? So.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it is 12 months though, still, right
Yeah.
now. But it would be nice if it actually went a little bit farther. Mhm. Depending on the magnitude, we're hoping not to sustain the amount of cost that we did this plan in the next MYRP.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I saw your microphone was off.
Just gonna check in with Ms. Brennan. If you've had a chance to take a look at the document and
I
you
have
have any
taken
thoughts.
I have taken a look at the document, and first, I do want to thank GMP. I see that you all have read our surrebuttal and truly are attempting to meet what we've requested in surrebuttal. But this is the first time we're seeing it, so I have sent it off to internal folks to take a look at. I can't give a response right this second, but again, I do appreciate it. That's about as much as I know, Mr. Chairman.
Understood. I want to acknowledge that the commission sent questions, I think it was last Friday, and GMP did not have a lot of time preparation. So I thought Mr. Bingle did a good job explaining the basic mechanics, and I'd suggest that we discuss maybe after lunch whether or not that should be, that document has sufficient use to overcome any potential prejudice or any concerns the department has. We can discuss that after lunch, if that makes sense for folks.
We'd also be happy to just go ahead and file it in EPUC, and we could use it as a cross exhibit of Mr. Hunt later in the day.
Wait. So I would object to that because this is the first we're seeing it. I did send it to Mr. Hunt, I can tell you, but he is also in this hearing, and this would be the first time he is looking at it. So I wouldn't be supportive of crossing Mr. Hunt on something he wouldn't have had a chance to review until probably when he's on the stand.
So I'd suggest if folks have the opportunity to have a discussion about this, Ms. Brennan, if you can check with your folks. Yeah, we'll check in after lunch on this particular, but I do appreciate Mr. Bingle sort of walking through, it sounds like walking through the overall document, and agree with the overall sentiment of attempting to be at least somewhat responsive. So I'll just leave it at that until after lunch.
Thank you.
Ms. Papidi, apologies for that.
Oh, no. So if I have any other questions on that, we'll just wait until after lunch. Is that the way we want to go, or do we want, if I have on that topic?
I would actually keep going as long as you have a good enough understanding of what Mr. Bingle is proposing. I believe I do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I guess so the initial testimony was that there would be many other changes to the plan and the structure. I just want to confirm that there aren't any other changes that we should be aware of that would impact this new proposal.
We worked it through, and some of the dates are challenging just because it's surprisingly difficult when you start describing what days things are filed and when things go into effect. And we also wanted to make sure we understood exactly how the adjusters would work in terms of would we eliminate the smoother, which we decided to do. But that's it, yes.
Okay. I think that's all I have on that topic. for now, until later, maybe. Do you
I
have
do have a
anything?
I do have a quick question on the idea of sort of the smoothing. I think there's the benefits associated with minimizing the potential for rate shock. There's also the potential for greater disconnect from the actual costs. For example, particularly cold winter that might drive an increase in rates. Customers wouldn't necessarily see that potentially for quite a while, and I think even longer than under the process that you just spelled out here. How should we be balancing sort of the pros and cons there? Because in my mind, there is some benefit to customers understanding what external factors are impacting their rates.
We did prefer to keep our current plan in terms of the quarterly adjusters, so we agree with you on that one.
So my apologies, I don't think I was particularly clear. In my mind, there's actually value to getting rid of the quarterly adjusters because there is the potential for customers to see a more immediate rate impact that could then be linked to, for example, a particularly cold winter, something or some other, invasion of Ukraine, something else, that external factor that is triggering a change in rates. The customers would see that much more immediately without the smoothing factor, I believe. And I think there's some benefit to the transparency associated with that. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that perspective.
So sorry, Chairman McNamara, I was leaping right to the current proposal we had with the 6 months, and that's essentially doing the same thing, which is you lose the connectivity to the events that just happened. In terms of the smoother, it was more about responding to concerns about the bills changing frequently, and so that's why we put that at the top of priorities, but we agree with you in terms of causality and recency and how current something is in people's minds.
Okay, but just to make sure I heard you properly, at the beginning of your statement just now, you're saying because there's a 6-month lag, you still don't have the immediacy of the rates, and you might actually lose some of the immediacy.
Correct.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you. All right.
Because
thank you.
there's even greater lag because of the review process, and it would be an extra 4 months or so if we go with that proposal.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry for that confusion.
Oh, sorry.
Badly worded question. Thank you.
I do have some follow-up thoughts on reducing the frequency of filing that relate to the structure of the adjuster in general, which is that it's a percentage on the bill, the total bill, well, not the complete total bill, but certain portions of the bill. And with the filings going to only 2 times a year, would it make sense to consider a more transparent rate process, which is that you would just apply the increase to the total or to the components of the bill, meaning the KWH charge and the customer charge, as opposed to continuing with the separate line item charge? I guess I'm a little concerned about the transparency of, looking at a rate and how it's presented versus, this is your rate, but then on top of that, you have this line item charge that is going to fluctuate and be, there's some certainty around it, but there isn't complete certainty around it. So my question is, should we consider shifting away from the surcharge in light of the less frequent filings?
Ms. Papiti, so in the past, we did apply the power supply adjuster on a per KWH basis. And then we did the storm, I believe, was a percent adder. And it just got to be, there was some causality issues, and it was just like we wanted something simpler. And so that's why we went with the percentage adder on customers' bills.
But is it, I mean, it doesn't appear to be simpler for customers because it adds a layer of complexity there. So can you explain the simpler for GMP and how that translates into a benefit for customers?
Well, it becomes simpler for customers just because it's not on a per kWh basis. So then if it were, maybe we'd get into different classes receiving more of the costs or more of the benefits. And that's kind of the concern with that, as opposed to if it's, we already have a cost of service study and we have rate designs. And so if we just add it as a surcharge or we return the money back to customers, which is in line with their retail rates, we just think that that's simpler. As opposed to, say, for example, winter, when ski areas are using a lot of power, then maybe they incur more of the cost, or maybe if it's return money, they get more money back from GMP. So that's kind of the reason why, the thinking behind that.
Okay. What about the ESAM? Could that be wrapped up into base rates? Because you know the adjuster is presented to customers as current energy and major storm adjuster and doesn't reference the earning sharing. So could the ESAM be wrapped up into base rates as opposed to having it incorporated into the line item surcharge?
Well, to answer your question, Mr. Petey, everything probably is possible. One of the things is, though, that when we have that filing, if we have it in December, it's right after our fiscal year, so it's timely. And yeah, but could it be then included in the next June 1st base rate filing? It could be. Don't know, and again, it depends on how we do. One of the reasons why we don't include it there is, one, because of the timing, most importantly, and two, we just don't know how lumpy it is or not. Historically, we haven't had much there, but it's more about the timing in terms of we'd like to discuss it right after the fiscal year. That's right when we do our audits. We get audited by Deloitte, and so it's fresh in our minds as well. And I think that's more useful for the department and the PUC just because it's more recent.
Okay. And I think we have a question for Mr. Castengay is going to address about what GMP calls the line item charge, so we can explore that issue with him. Okay, those are my questions on that topic. Does anyone have anything else on that? Okay. I think from a high level standpoint, in GFP's Exhibit 7, which was that table that documented the issues and the department's positions and such, you folks were referenced as from a high level ROE standpoint, and I wanted to see if you could respond to Mr. Enterline's testimony on historical access to capital based on GMP's actual return on equity, yeah, I wanted to see if you could respond to that, because I don't believe that GMP's ROE witness responded to that testimony, and so I just wanted to get an understanding of what you folks thought of that in light of the ROE recommendation from the department.
Ms. Mapiti, could you be just a little bit more? I think I understand what you're asking.
Okay.
But I just would like you to
Yeah.
try it again one more time,
Sure.
please?
Yeah, no problem. So Mr. Enterline had some testimony about historical access to capital, and that there were not challenges associated with that given GMP's actual ROE during that time period. And so I wanted to see from GMP if there was a response to that, and shed some light on, are there aspects of that that we should know about that we wouldn't necessarily think of just reading from Mr. Enterline's testimony.
Okay. I
Is
understand
that
the question.
helpful? Okay.
It is helpful. Thank you very much. The answer is a lot of it depends about the time period we're talking about. So I believe Mr. Enterline was pointing to 2020 through, say, 2022. So two items about that. One is we didn't receive, I think maybe we received $30 million of equity investment from our investor. But the other part was that there was a perception that that was the pandemic and that it was a short-term blip in market conditions. We are asking our investor to invest in Vermont and in our infrastructure for an average about 30 years. That's the average useful life ballpark figure of our equipment. And so having more certainty about ROE, or at least how it's calculated, helps our investor. I'm not privy to discussions with our parent company about that, but this is just based from my perspective in my 20 years of working here.
Thank you. That's helpful. I think we could move on to the second question. Question 4 from the commission's questions that went out on Friday. And I'll just read that. And so it says, please be prepared to discuss GMP's proposal to modify the commission's traditional process for reviewing debt financing proposals under 30 V.S.A. Section 108 and the company's proposed reliance on a debt issuance forecast for the term of the proposed MYRP. The commission would like to hear from GMP specific examples of how the current process of filing discrete petitions pursuant to 30 V.S.A. Section 108 has resulted in adverse ratepayer impacts. Please also be prepared to discuss whether this proposal conflicts with the department's recommendation that the cost of long-term debt remains subject to updates throughout the term of the proposed MYRP to allow the opportunity for customers to benefit from lower debt costs if the opportunities arise. And we also said that GMP and the department should also anticipate that the commission will expect legal briefing on this issue. So I will pass it over to GMP.
Hi, yes, I'll take this one. So to address the first part that came up in terms of a specific example, we don't have specific examples of direct customer impact here to cite, but what we are trying to address is this need to add additional flexibility to manage market volatility effectively, and through that, reduce potential risk for customers that comes with current market uncertainty. On multiple occasions, we've had to seek expedited review and approval from the DPS and PUC in order to enter the markets at the appropriate time. And so our thought here is to be able to provide you, as we did, with a full long-term debt issuance forecast for the entirety of the MYRP for you to review and approve at this time. And as long as our debt issuance falls within those time periods and amounts and interest rates that would be considered approved at this time. And then if I move on to the next part where we talked about the long-term debt, we're in agreement there in terms of updating that each year. We'll update it to reflect past and future or forecasted debt issuances throughout the plan.
Right, the department is and GMP are now in agreement on that
Yes.
aspect. Is that what you're saying? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Any follow-up on that, Dan?
I'm sorry, I just have a quick, I'm responsible for writing that question, so I just have a quick follow-up. There haven't been any specific examples then where you ultimately had to pay a higher interest rate on a long-term debt commitment because of waiting for the regulatory review process to play out?
We don't have those specific
Okay.
examples that we're, aware of to show today.
And I have, and Ms. Stone, you might be the right person to answer this question. It's on a somewhat related issue and is somewhat in response to the department's rebuttal testimony, which addressed GMP's credit rating and its parent's credit rating and how that affects GMP's ability to raise debt capital. And I'm wondering, at the first point, can you respond to the assertions that were made in the department's rebuttal testimony about your parent company, I think it was Noverco in this case, how its debt rating affects the debt issuances that the company receives? And do you disagree with how that was characterized by the department?
Sure, I'm not as familiar with this, but my understanding is our parent company does not impact that.
And what is GMP's current debt rating? Do you know what it is off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. And Mr. Bingle, you don't know either off the top of your head? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Then I won't ask any further questions on that then. So.
If I could respond to one point, Mr. Burke. You asked for an example, and probably about 10 years ago, there was an opportunity, and this is it's an example of something where market conditions change rapidly. One of them actually pertains to the pandemic, right, where the treasury yields declined quite a bit, but the other one was Brexit. And when we had Brexit, GMP's ROE actually was changed quite a bit by that, just because of the fact that the 2-week measurement period fell within Brexit. And when Brexit occurred, there was a flight to US treasuries, which caused a decrease in the yield. So in an example, if we could be a little bit more nimble and we could secure rates at an opportunity like that within a month, then that would be to the customer's benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Bingle. That was helpful.
Ms. Papiti, were you going to move to an entirely different line of questions?
Yes.
All right. I'd suggest at this point, why don't we break for lunch? So I think we do have enough questions not to just keep going at this point. So come back or reconvene at 1 o'clock. Does that work? Great.
Mr. Chair, I just want to let you know, I'm going to stop the recording for lunch. And my understanding is that that will result in us having 2 separate files that will be updated. So people should just understand that.
Great. Thank you very much. See you in about an hour.
Thank you.